if you are somebody that has a garden or anything in this life that you have to tend to, this episode is for you.
Welcome to another episode of the Reason to Behold podcast with Tolly Talks.
And Arnold Reasons.
Nearly choked on the
Sponsored drinks,
sparkling
yeah?
water. Not yet, bro. They don't even get mentioned. You can just see the ingredients lists. Talk to me about this garden, bro.
So, I have been watching my garden turn into a jungle for months. And normally I borrow the lawnmower from my father in law.
Mm.
But the time came yesterday for me to become a real man and purchase my
Come
own
on.
lawnmower and stop having excuses to not tend to my garden. And
Mm.
bro, the garden was disgraceful. And if you listen to us with any regularity, you will know that this is pretty much cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Especially with me. Less so with Arnold, but more with me. This is cyclical. My garden will get way out of hand. I'll have to do like a big chop. And then I'm like, I'm never going to do this again. And then I do it again.
Mm.
But now we have a lawnmower. So we will see if that changes my behavior. But bro, one of the things that I saw was this big mound of mud. I was just confused. Like, what is this? Because bro, we had a tree taken out, and when he took
Mm.
the tree out, he like covered it over with mud and stuff. And I thought, oh, okay, but this was way on the other side of the garden. I'm
Mm.
like, what is this? And I'm looking, bro, it's an anthill. An anthill. I've never had an anthill in my garden, not once. But I've also not left my garden to get this out of hand for such a
Mm.
long time. And so I realized that, bro, if you don't deal with your stuff, if you don't take care of it, it
Mm.
will just evolve into things that you didn't even think of. Because,
Mm.
bro, I had to then check out, okay, how do I get rid of an anthill? What do I do with it? Blah, blah, blah. Bro, it was a whole mess. I couldn't even cut that bit of the garden because there was an anthill.
Mm.
And that was truly my own fault. And I was thinking, I'm going to tell Arnold about this because because I've left it so long that now there is stuff growing that shouldn't be growing. Even in the middle of my
Mm.
grass, there is now weeds in the middle,
Oh.
not even by the edges where it used to be, but in the middle. And this is what happens when you don't look after the stuff that you're meant to.
Oh my gosh. Things have to be looked after. So now to make
They
you
have to
feel
be.
less like it's just you, over the last few
Okay.
weeks, right? This year,
Yes.
I had been on top of things, right? I had a good routine, good rhythm. So I was keeping up with the maintenance, right?
Mm,
Until one weekend where it rained. And so in terms of like when I generally tend to do garden, it usually falls on a Sunday.
yeah.
So it rains this weekend. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. And then obviously, you know the weather, what it's been like over the last few weeks, right? We've been getting a lot of this rain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like week after week. When I'm ready and I'm available, I have the same problem.
Yeah.
It's either
Yeah.
it's raining on the day or the grass is so wet from the last rain that I'm pretty much not able to do what I need to do as effectively as I would. And so right now, the state of my garden does not reflect the kingdom, bro. It doesn't reflect the kingdom because like and I'm
Oh.
talking front and back because there was one weekend where I managed to quickly get out back, which usually grows a lot faster than the
Yeah.
front, right? And I took care of it.
Yeah.
Front garden was fine. But now it's at a place where both front and back, like it's just wilderness, bro. And so I'm hearing you on this thing, man, about the importance of taking care of things. Because now it's at a place where, like, what do you do? Because we're talking about two different things, right? We're talking about
Yeah.
when you've left things for a while and they've now become so bad that you're now having to figure out what you're going to do to put it right. And then we're also
Mm,
talking about maybe you were consistent at one point, and then for one reason or another, things fell apart, right? And
mm,
now you're trying
mm.
to figure out the strategy on how you're going to get back on top. So you look like you had something to say there, bro.
My question for you is, what happens if you cut the grass when it's wet? Because I feel like I've got this urban legend in my head that it like busts your lawnmower and all this stuff,
Mm.
but I don't think it actually does. I thought it just and that's what I'm wondering. What does it actually do when you cut it when it's wet?
It makes it a lot more difficult to get as an effective cut as you want. Dry grass is much easier to cut and leave in good maintenance
Yeah,
than it is with wet, in my experience, anyway.
but not
So,
impossible. It's not like you can't actually cut your grass when it's wet.
eh, okay, I choose not to because,
But no, but the reason I ask you though, yeah, is
yeah,
because for a long time I thought you couldn't cut it when it was wet, and
no,
then
no, no,
one
you
time
can.
I just had to say it's getting messy, and I just had
Yeah.
to firm it. I just had to do it, and I was like, oh, nothing exploded, no one died.
Yeah.
You can actually cut it when it's wet, and that's where, like, so yesterday, I knew it's been raining on and off, and I said, by force or by fire today, while it's dry, I'm cutting this grass. Bro, I was tired. Yes, my wife, she
Yeah.
was like, why don't you rest? And I said, no, by fire, by force, it's happening today. I don't care. It's happening.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to do it when it's wet. But
Yeah.
even when it's wet, you can still cut the grass. This is the thing.
So I guess it depends on how wet. Because when I've cut it when it's wet, what I've found is that, like, the way that the grass gathers, even within the machine itself, it gets to a point where it's ineffective. Maybe
Yeah.
I've got a cheap lawnmower, right? But the overall cut is very different to when you cut it dry. So for me, as a first principle, I don't cut wet.
But question, would it be better to have been cut wet and to be a subpar cut than what you have now?
I don't think so, not in my opinion.
Oh, really?
I don't.
Interesting.
I don't, because, and this is the thing, because if I thought it would have, I would have done it. And I did consider it at one point, but I decided against it because I thought to myself, look, at the end of the day, it's not ideal. It's not the way that I want it to be, but I would much rather do it in the conditions that I think are most optimal for it.
Interesting.
Rather than go for a wet cut.
Because I probably disagree. Because for me, I'm like, I would rather that it's cut and it took me a little bit more effort than I have to deal with that jungle that I had outside. Because, bro, every time I look outside, I feel ashamed. And you know, and people already know about my neighbor, yeah? My neighbor with his perfect football pitch garden, yeah? He does it every week, no matter what, and it just looks perfect. So I just came to a point, I said, look, no matter what, I'm going to... Huh? Is that yours?
I've got
the one that helped you cut yours the first time.
His one's good as well, but there's another one that he's just got a football pitch. Like,
yeah.
But okay, so let me ask you this, yeah? Because since that's how you said that you would approach it and how you feel about it, what has been the reason and the rationale behind why you haven't done it all this time?
Pure laziness, mate. So, like, really? I didn't have a lawnmower. And I didn't put in the effort to go and figure out what's a good lawnmower, which one should I buy. I didn't want to spend the money on a lawnmower. Bruv, do you know, like, how old that makes me feel? I have to be, I'm buying lawnmowers. Why am I doing that? What do you mean? Like, I'm young things. What are you talking about? You know? But I've become that suburban man who spends money on lawnmowers. And bro, I didn't even buy the cheapest lawnmower. This is how you know I've grown, yeah? I didn't even buy the cheapest one. I didn't buy the most expensive one, but I bought a reasonably priced one that had some good, you know, some good features, and I understood what was going on. It was just laziness, bro. I didn't put in the time to do it. Didn't put in the time. So yesterday, I put in the time. I forced myself to go buy it, and I forced myself to cut it. And I forced myself to pull up all the weeds, all the edgy bits I didn't do. It was like a haircut, bro. I combed the front for the edges and everything, and then I chewed. Bruv, I did it properly. Call me barber of the grass, mate. I did it properly.
So what was it that made you flip the switch? Like, what was it that made you go from obviously how you felt about it before to say, no, you know what, I'm going to do this? Yeah. I'm curious.
I'm on an interesting journey at the moment, right? And as you know, I've not been working for a while. Yeah. Like, not officially in a 9 to 5. And one of the things that I realized was that over time, my execution was starting to wane. I was starting to get worse at execution. And execution was something that I was very good at. And I noticed that without that structure, sometimes my execution was starting to wane. And so I just decided I need to start executing at a higher level again. And that's one of the ways that I can execute at a higher level. Just do it, you know, make it happen. That's what I should be doing, is making stuff happen. So yeah, man, that's what really shifted. Because for me, I'm like, nope, that's not who I've been called to be. I need to get back onto my proper execution things.
Amazing, bro. I've got a garden waiting if you're ready to come and do a wet cut since you're open to it.
Bro.
Practice that.
If I'm about, I'll happily do your wet cut for you. I'll do it for you. That's fine. Because you know what, bro? It wasn't even that bad when I did the wet cut. It actually wasn't.
How wet was your wet cut, though? Like, are we talking about like bro? It was drenched?
Like wet. It was wet. Yeah. I've only ever done it bone dry. Yeah. So for me, anything above bone dry, but it was just getting so bad I had to do it. And sometimes you have to do the inner, like, it's not effective. It's not going to be as pretty, but bro, it's done. And I'm not beefing with my garden.
Brother, you got my address, man. I'm happy to have you over, bro.
Nah. Bro, that is your cross to carry. That is your cross to carry.
And I'm carrying it well, bro, for what it is. But okay, cool. That makes a lot of sense. I think so for someone who's listening to this, right? Because I think what you've described is very, very relatable. And even what I've described as well, right? This whole thing of
Mm,
either feeling so out of rhythm that you're having to find either a new rhythm or get back into the swing of things, or having basically fallen off. When it comes to how you approach that in other areas, what are some things that help you to basically, I guess, get started? Because that's the first part, isn't it? Like, it's not just every single rhythm starts with getting started, right? Without getting started, there
mm,
is no rhythm to be built, right? It takes time.
mm,
And I think the getting started part, like if you think about even what you described about the garden, even what I'm describing, right? Days pass, weeks pass, months sometimes pass, maybe even years pass. And it's not like at
mm,
any point before you got to your switch of mindset moment, it's not like there weren't several times where you were like, okay, today's gonna be the day, or maybe I'm gonna do it today, or I'm gonna do it tomorrow. Like, right? So what do you think are some practical
mm.
kind of thoughts or mindsets that help with getting started?
I don't think there's any real secret or a shortcut. It
Mm,
is just you have to just do it. Like
mm,
this is the thing. Like we're all like, okay, on Monday I'll start my diet. Okay, on
mm,
after this holiday I'll do this, and it's like, but why don't you do it now? Why don't you take the steps now towards what you want to do? Because bro,
mm,
yesterday, yeah, I was tired. I just wanted to sleep. But I said, nope, I'm going to pull out my phone. I'm going to look at lawnmowers and I'm going to do it now. So
mm,
there's enough is enough. It just has to change now. And even with like longer term things, like whether it's like weight loss or whether it's, moving towards a career that you want, what's the thing that you can do today, right now, to get you closer?
mm.
How can you separate that? You told me about those little timers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Little timers. So I've
Yeah.
got one. Yeah.
Come
That
on.
just says, okay, I'm just going to, sorry.
I said, come on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I got one. So I say I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing this one thing. I'm going to
Yeah.
do 15 minutes of progress towards this thing, 5 minutes of progress towards this thing, 1 minute,
Mm,
whatever it is. Do something now towards what you want it to be. If
mm,
it's like, okay, I'm going out for food, let me make one decision that will leave me better off than if I hadn't made the decision. Let me not have the sauce that's the extra calories. Let me not take the chips and take a salad, whatever it is. Make a small movement towards it and the momentum builds because
mm,
that's what we're scared of, getting out of first gear, getting things
mm.
moving. That's often the scariest bit. But once you start, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah. I think to add to that as well, I love it. I think it's so interesting how much I think we discount just moving, right? Because
Mm,
like
mm,
you said, it's not some massive thing. And I think about even just some of the times where I've had to get out of a funk. And even because this is another thing, right? Catching yourself before something becomes
mm,
something that spirals out of control, right?
mm,
I can
mm,
think of
mm,
times where because I haven't because I've spent so much time focusing on how inconsistent things are, or maybe how the garden looks, right?
mm,
I've become overwhelmed and felt like, oh, it's gonna take so long and so much to get it back to what it once was, right?
mm,
And I think that, like you've described, that just making a decision and then doing something, following the decision that you've made, is literally the beginning of where momentum starts. And I
mm,
think what I love about even this conversation is that it's not even just something that you only do in one kind of aspect of your life. It's like
mm,
consistency breeds consistency. I found that when I'm in rhythm and I'm in motion and I'm consistent about disciplines in one area of life, it tends to flow over to other areas. And I'll give you an example. The
yeah.
other day, this not the other day, this was probably like the last time I did the garden. So maybe like a month ago, maybe a
Mm,
bit more. Um, we were doing some work in the garden, right? And like it involved doing some digging and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, this thing was hard labor, bro. Yeah. And I remember I got to the point where I'd done like maybe, let's say 85%, and I was ready to just go
mm,
in the house and just sit down and relax, right?
mm,
But I had a moment where I said to myself, like, we finish, we don't quit, we take it to the end and we do what
love
needs
that.
to be done. And that was something that had translated from the health and fitness journey, from going to the gym, from
Mm,
doing the reps that I promised myself that I would do, from finishing
mm,
the time that I'd set out to do on the cross trainer. And I think that's where sometimes, the same way I said, I think we underestimate how beneficial the small things are. I think we also overlook how much of an impact our inconsistencies in other areas are as well. Because it's like, there was something I was listening to the other day that was talking about how the more that you the more that you basically plan or promise to do something and then don't do it, the less trustworthy you
Mm,
become to yourself. And the more that you build that pattern of
yep.
not being able to fulfill on the promises you make to yourself, it spills out into the promises and the things that you make to other people, your commitment, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
and I think it really is that deep. I think across the board, like these are some of the things that I try to think about that help to sometimes make me make a decision that I don't want to otherwise make, without good
mm,
reason. So yeah.
mm. And I think you're so right because so often I feel like we overestimate how bad something is going to be
Yeah.
and underestimate how good the effect of that thing is going to be. So,
Mm.
like for example, just finishing that last bit of the garden, or even getting started to do the garden, bro. Halfway through the garden, I found myself thinking, "This wasn't even that bad.
Yeah.
This was this wasn't even that bad. The way it looked before, and now it's almost done. I'm like, this wasn't even that bad. Why am I? But the
Yeah.
visual, yeah, now that I look at out of that garden was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And bro, do you know the one that always gets me? Yeah, is laundry. Yeah, laundry. I'm so good, yeah, at washing my clothes. My clothes
Mm.
are always clean. How often do I take them out of the dryer and put them away? Not very often. And I always look at that mountain of laundry and I think, oh, that's going to take me hours. And then
Mm.
like 10, 15 minutes in, I'm like, was this it?
Mm.
Like, was
Mm.
this it? But getting out of first gear to start doing it is the bit where I've historically struggled. And
Mm.
even now, bro, there's like 2 or 3 bags of laundry that is waiting for me that I'm going to go and do once we get off this. Just because, bro, it just needs to get done. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
never as
yeah,
bad
yeah,
as I
yeah,
think, but I
yeah,
always feel so much better once it's done.
yeah,
So it's like I think we underestimate
yeah,
how good it's going to be once it's done and overestimate how bad it's going to be to do it,
yeah. I hear that, man. I hear that, bro.
you know?
And I think, you know what? I think it's also a worthwhile exercise to reflect on where things went wrong and why they went wrong,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
starting to think forward on planning how that can be avoided. Because like, even like, so let's say with the garden on my side, right? I'm against this wet cup 100%, right? But I also think that part of the problem on my side is that I didn't prepare well enough in terms of anticipating the weather. I just let it happen and I assumed it was always going to be good. If I took the
Mm.
time to even just pay attention to weather forecasts, right? You don't have to be prophetic. They seem to do this thing pretty consistently, right? But
Every day. Yeah.
if I started to look at this thing ahead of time, rather than
Mm.
mentally making a decision that I'm going to do it and assuming the conditions of the day, then maybe I wouldn't have to do a wet cut. Do you get what I'm saying? Maybe I would have better planned and prepared to avoid even having to get
Yes.
to the wet cut stage. Um, and I think that it's little things like that, even just looking on reflection and even planning forward. I need to pay
Mm.
attention to the weather forecast more, at the least. If I'm not going to
Bro,
do a
we're
wet
becoming
cut,
grown men, you know. We're becoming grown ups, yeah. Weather forecast, lawnmowers, like. Do
and
you know what?
it's so
I'm
go on,
actually
go on.
quite surprised though that you wouldn't do the wet cup. You strike me as a person that would just get it done. That's the thing. I'm surprised you wouldn't do the wet cup.
I think, do you know what it is? Okay, it's not that I definitely wouldn't do the wet cut because I've done a wet cut before, but I would much rather deal with things better up front so that I don't have to do the wet cut. Same way, like when it comes to
Interesting.
um, gym training and stuff like that, right? I would much rather have a routine that I know I'm going to be consistent with so that I can build up
Mm.
to whatever weight that I'm going to be lifting on a particular exercise rather than having been out of the gym for all of this time and now find myself
Mm.
trying to lift what I would have been doing if I was consistent for 6 months rather than just starting where I am, if that makes sense. So I think it's, for me, it's more about
Yeah.
trying to get out in front of it earlier so that I can
Mm.
kind of maintain the rhythm and the routine rather than
Mm.
doing what I feel like is like just the long, because there are definitely things in life that I have done that are more difficult than a wet cut. Right?
Yeah, and that's what's surprising because for me, sometimes you can't even control the situation that you're in. Like this
Yeah.
summer is the most rainy summer I think we've ever had in
Mm,
British history. Do you know what
mm,
I mean? Like, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, bro, sometimes this summer your grass is just going to be wet, and you
yeah.
might not even get 2 good days like we've just had now, where actually the sun is out. That
Yeah.
might not even be happening this summer, and that's not
Mm,
something because you can't control that. You know, so
Yeah.
that's what's interesting for me. So I
And
thought if you needed to do, you just do it.
have you also noticed though, because what I found in with paying attention to my garden, right, is that when it does rain,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
grass doesn't grow that much. That's what I found. It tends to be that when the sun comes out, that's when I
Really?
see it shoot up all of a sudden. So like even with the rainy
Ah,
days, it's like the
yeah,
garden was not the neat, it wasn't like the tidiest, but it was also like slowly creeping, right?
yeah.
These last few days of sun, it's like they've just baptized the grass with just this miracle growth serum that's just sending them through the roof. But that being said,
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna try and get out and get it done today because I'm pretty sure. Didn't I check the weather
yeah.
yesterday or something like that? They were talking about rain on the weekend.
Nah, it's got to be done. It's got to be
I
done.
can't come back
It's
to
got.
next
And
week
bro,
and literally
sometimes you have to adjust. That's the
Yeah,
other thing.
yeah.
Is sometimes you have to be willing and able to adjust,
Mm,
just to make sure that stuff gets done. And that's one of the principles I really like, by Bishop, where he
mm,
talks about have your time in the morning where you just block stuff out and you get it done, where you can
yeah.
just do focus stuff in the morning. If you want to goof off for the rest of the day, go goof off for the rest of the day, but make sure that your days are set up for success.
Mm,
And he talks about how he books meetings from the end of the day backwards.
mm,
Yeah. Whereas I generally book from the front to towards the end. I say,
mm.
okay, I've got time in the morning. No, you've just deaded your morning. Like, make time in the morning to get your stuff done. Like,
Yeah,
it's just so
yeah.
common sense.
Hmm. I hear it, man.
So you're gonna cut your grass. I'm gonna do my
Yeah.
laundry. Good deal. Good deal.
We're gonna be good human beings. Half good human
Yeah,
beings.
man. Productive.
Yeah, man.
So, what's that thing, listener, that you are putting off doing that you should just do? We
Mm,
all have those things. Mine is definitely laundry on a regular basis, but from this day forth, that is not going to be it anymore. I'm going to
mm.
make sure that I can just do it and just get it done. So, we all have those things. You know, what are those things that are actually going to move the needle that you just need to go do? Go do them. Don't try and make excuses. Don't try and feel motivated. Just do. Don't try, do.
Peace.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
I was a bit too early there. Peace, peace, peace.